Well, there's a lot to talk about. This is my review for The Wheel of Time, Season 3, Episode 7, Goldeneyes. This is Unraveling the Pattern. I'm Lauren. Thanks for watching. Let's jump right in. As always, for my reviews, I talk about the good, the bad, the ugly, the confusing, the great, and then I speculate about some things and talk about some theories. So the first part of this will be non-spoilers or show-only spoilers. I won't get deep into book spoilers, but then once I get into the theories section, we'll talk about some spoilers. A few other things really quick. Please help me get to 50,000 subscribers by the end of Season 3, and please be sure to watch my breakdown videos, the ones that I actually put a lot of time and effort into. I would love it if you watch them. And I always feel I have to say this. Yes, I've seen the full season, but I will never spoil things past the current episode that I'm reviewing. And if I speculate about things, it isn't a way for me to try to hint at things coming in the show. It's just me giving my legitimate thoughts as I watch the season in order. I wrote down all of my thoughts, and I'm just going to be presenting as if I haven't seen the rest of the season. So I know it's hard for some people to trust me, but I promise you I'm not going to spoil things for the show. Okay, enough preamble. Let's jump right in with the good. I've got a long list of good for this episode, but I have to be honest, overall, this episode is kind of a mixed bag for me. It had really high highs and it had some low lows for me. And as always, those low lows are me nitpicking about things I wish I had seen from the books that didn't make it into the episode, which I'll talk about in the next section. But there were a lot of good things, so let's just go down the list. Right off the bat, the music really stood out to me, and the sets. I mean, that Two Rivers set is just so cool. And I just released a video about my Two Rivers set visit in Prague from over a year and a half ago. I finally got that video out literally yesterday. So if you haven't seen that, please watch that. It was such a delight to be able to visit the set, and knowing that I visited it right around the time when they were shooting all of the Perrin Goldeneyes Battle of the Two Rivers stuff was really exciting. It was exciting to see things. I was like the Leonardo DiCaprio meme the whole time, pointing at things as I was watching the episode because, I've been there. It was really exciting. So yeah, I also have 25 minutes of raw, unedited footage of that visit that I just released as an unlisted video. There's a link of that in the description of my official public video where I talk about that trip. So anyway, I'd highly recommend that. But man, the set's definitely a highlight of the show. It was exciting to see Perrin tell someone not to call him Lord Perrin or Lord Goldeneyes. I like that a lot. I had a bit of a nitpick about this at first, but the more I thought about it, the more I liked this change that they just have men and women working together. There wasn't this big focus on the men and women being separate like in the book. It was just men and women working together, preparing together, learning to fight together, making weapons together, building all of the fortifications together. I liked that. I think that's a great theme of the Wheel of Time, showing the women's circle and the village council were the men and the women working together. And there was a mention of the women's circle in this episode by Fayo, which I appreciated. It's just so great to see Aram and Isla, or Illa, however they call her in the show, the Tuatha or Tinkers. I just love seeing them. I think that the woman who plays Isla just brings so much depth to that character, and it was heartbreaking to see Aram. I'll talk more about Aram in a bit. This was just a little thing, but I appreciated that Mistress Alvir was being a good innkeeper and hostess. The way that she took the time to pick the meat out of the stew for the Tinkers, and then Isla looked over at Aram like, we can't eat that. I almost thought that was kind of snooty of them, but I guess that's kind of the point. Like, I totally get it. If you're vegan or you're vegetarian, you don't even want to eat something that had meat in it. But I also just love that little detail of Mistress Alvir just being a good host and try to take care of the people she was caring for. I thought that was sweet. It was fun to see Loyal spending a lot of time with the maidens. It showed how smart he is that he picked up on their maiden hand talk, and seeing him working on his book, that just warmed my heart. I'll talk more about Loyal in a bit because there were some things about Loyal in this episode that really disappointed me, but we'll get there. These little moments of characters from the Two Rivers, like Sen Bui talking about the Two Rivers longbows and Days Conger drinking and little things like that, I appreciated in this episode. There's a lot of character and a lot of heart to the Two Rivers people. And as rushed as this episode was in some ways, I appreciate that they took moments like that to make those characters more important. I appreciated that a lot. It gave me chills to see the wolf head banner, and I appreciate how the wolf head banner looked really sort of makeshift, like somebody made it just recently. I thought that was a really fun detail, and it was so exciting to see that. And then at the very end of the episode, in the very last shot, showing that wolf head banner sort of tattered and ripped was a cool detail. One little detail about the wolf head banner that I loved is the way Fail reacted to it. She saw Perrin reacting to it, and she's like, I know you love it. I thought that was cute. In general, I just really liked the Fail and Perrin interactions in this episode. The way that he tried to protect her, and she was like, why are you trying to protect me? And It just felt very Fael and Perrin, but in a good way. In a way, they almost communicated more in this episode with each other than they did in like 3 books. And I appreciated that. They're just being open with each other. He straight up tells her, I don't want you to die. I appreciated that. I appreciate that she was just like, well, too bad. I'm here. I'm helping. I also like how he's like, stay behind me. And she was kind of upset. And he's like, no, so you can kill the Trollocs that I miss. And she had that kind of grin on her face. I appreciated that moment. Honestly, this might be controversial, but I love Dane Bornhold. I think he's doing a great job. He's a great character. He's very interesting to me. And I'm genuinely looking forward to what happens with him and his character and with Perrin. And I also appreciate that they're not really skirting this issue. Dane doesn't really believe that Perrin's a dark friend. He knows that Perrin killed his father and that was wrong, but I appreciate that they're not doing this thing like they did in the books where he's constantly like, Perrin's a dark friend. And it's like, no, he's not. Give it up, you know? So anyway, it'll be interesting to see kind of where they go with that. Obviously, the ending of the episode was kind of a surprise when Perrin just turned himself in. My assumption is that that's kind of the ending for Perrin's story arc for this season. Maybe we'll see more of that in the next episode. But for now, I'm like really curious how they're going to handle all that because it's obviously different from the books, but in a good way. This was a little moment, but I appreciated when the maidens took offense when Perrin told Isla, the Tuatha, that they run faster than anybody. And the Aiel were like, yeah, right. I thought that was cute. In general, I also really like the Bane and Chiad stuff. The way that they were developed and the way that their reactions with Loial were handled. I honestly thought that was really beautiful. I don't love what they did with Loial, which I'll talk about more, but I do appreciate all the build up to that and the way that the maidens were there with him and they were his friends. I thought that was all done pretty well. I will say seeing Loial's book and him being friends with Perrin, those things really stood out to me. There's a line here, I wrote it down. He said, and I swear your name will sing in the world's ears, Lord Perrin Goldeneyes. I really like that moment between Perrin and Loial. And yeah, after the episode, it was obvious that that was a goodbye between those two characters, but it was a beautiful moment. I'm just going to list some things really quick. Channeling the sharp hail, that was cool. I loved how the channeling looked. Perrin's armor, super cool. Daze Conger giving up drinking and then immediately being killed. I loved how she gave up drinking for channeling. I didn't love how she was immediately killed. Just a few other things in my list of good. Seeing Loial fight the Trollocs and the Dark Friends, that was super rad. He was so tough. I love seeing Loial fight. The interior of the ways, I noticed that was improved. That's kind of how I've imagined the ways, minus the lightning, but I kind of like how they do that in the show. To see all the like islands and the different pathways, some of them are broken and unclear. I thought the ways looked better in this episode than they ever did in the first 2 seasons, so I appreciated that. Bane and Chiad, I wrote, are awesome. Aram saving the children and taking up the sword, I really like that. The Trolloc chasing the Tinkers, that scene was really cool. The detail of the Trollocs I felt didn't get a lot of attention, but when they did, I thought they looked really great. You could tell it was kind of like episode 1 of the very first season, where they put some CGI mixed with practical effects, and it worked for me. Seeing the Trollocs like running on all fours, stuff like that was really cool. A moment that really stood out to me that made my heart sing was Marin Alvear killing the Trolloc and Fael saying, I like your women's circle. I thought that scene was really great. Eamon Valda being killed by the girls, burning him alive in the same way that he killed their mother. It was rushed, but I'm happy with it. I don't want Eamon Valda's storyline from the books, and so I actually appreciate in a way that he's just dead and gone, and that he got the ending he deserved. Burned alive. A little moment that I really liked was the interaction between Perrin and Padan Fain and the way that Perrin said he smelled Padan Fain's fear. I could be wrong, but I'm pretty sure that's the first time where we've gotten a hint that Perrin can smell more than just stuff or people. He can actually smell feelings, and I think that's a really important detail. Another cool thing, when Padan Fain called off the army, I think he was speaking in the Trolloc tongue. Maybe that was the old tongue, but I like that little detail. It sounded really guttural, the way I imagined the Trolloc tongue, so I thought that was a cool detail. And just a couple other things on my good list. I actually really liked how the White Cloaks just helped. I mean, yeah, the way that some of the White Cloaks ended up being Padan Fain's dark friends, and that was part of the trick. I thought that was actually handled quite well. The White Cloaks didn't show up for refuge in the village and then just not help in a similar way to what they did in the books. They just helped because it was the right thing to do, and I appreciated that. I really do feel the White Cloaks have been written better in the show than they were in the books, but I think Robert Jordan intentionally wanted the White Cloaks to be really bad soldiers. I think that was kind of the joke. Like, they were so full of themselves and they were really good at like polishing their white uniforms, but they actually weren't good at battle, and they weren't really good at, actually helping people. And it was sweet seeing Perrin and Fael kiss in the end. All right, let's move on to the bad, the ugly, and the confusing. Keep in mind that some of these things on my bad list are nitpicks and things that I wish we had time to see. My number one complaint always is that there isn't enough time. And so that when we do get episodes like this that are really fun, you can tell they put a lot of time and effort into the budget. There was so much going on in this episode, and I loved all of that. So don't get me wrong. I loved all the fighting. I thought the Trollocs looked cool when we saw them. But it just, to me, something about this episode in particular, I'm really on the fence about because this episode felt very big and also very small to me in a way that I can't quite get my head around. And I think a big part of that, if I'm being honest, is that I'm a book reader and I can't help but get some of what I saw in the books or what I read in the books out of my head. So I'm just going to go down this list. Some of these things might not make sense to you if you're not a book reader, but I'll just say these things quickly. No Lord Luke. We did see Lord Luke, but what was he doing? And where did he go at the end? No Trolloc raids leading up to this. This is a big complaint I have about this season in general. One of the things that made the Battle of the Two Rivers so awesome in the books is all the little Trolloc skirmishes that happened before that. There was a lot going on with Trollocs leading up to the battle, and I didn't really get that sense in the season. So I guess this is more of a season-wide nitpick. And again, this is just because we don't have enough time. There's just not enough time and budget to develop all these things the way they were done in the books. With that in mind, this is a great adaptation, especially for the medium of TV. But these are like, if they had the Lord of the Rings movie budget and could have made the Battle of the Two Rivers its own movie, these are the kinds of things I would have liked to see. I wrote this, a bit disappointed that the women didn't come in later, but I did like that the men and women worked together from the start. There's a great moment in the books where the women kind of joined the fight later, and I just would have liked to have seen that. There was a little element of that. The women did show up and fight. So the women did come in later after the battle kind of came into the walls, and I did appreciate that, but it just wasn't such a clear division as the way it was portrayed in the books. Another minor nitpick, why were there no fades? I have a theory about this. I think maybe there were no fades because Patton Fane was involved, but I'm not going to get into that right now. I'll talk about that more in my theories and speculation. But it would have been nice to see a fade or two. And I was disappointed that there was no Tam or Abel. I know that the show explained that Tam and Abel, meaning Tam, Althor, Rand's dad, and Abel Cawthon, Matt's dad, they were involved in the Battle of the Two Rivers in the books. And actually, Maxim took the role of Tam a little bit when he said things like archers loose. That's something that Tam did in the books. But anyway, they weren't there, and the show kind of explained this away as saying, well, they took Perrin's family and hid in the mountains to keep them safe. And I'm okay with that. This implies that maybe they'll come back later. I sure hope so. But it'll be interesting to see if they do ever come back in the show. Another minor nitpick, a lot of Dark Friends, not a lot of Trollocs. I don't know how they could have possibly afforded to do more Trollocs than they did. They probably couldn't afford that. And so it's understandable. But in the books, it was pretty much just Trollocs. There were some Dark Friends, but not to the degree that we saw. I feel like it was probably like a 70-30 split where 70% Dark Friends in the TV show and maybe 30% Trollocs. And I'm okay with that, all things considered. But, you know, I'm talking about my nitpicks. That's one of them. I already kind of mentioned this, but Daze Conger learning how to channel and then immediately being killed. I'm not a big fan of that, but I understand. Sometimes these people are just there for plot convenience, and that disappoints me. We've talked about this before, but power levels are all over the place in this show. It's more like when the plot needs it, they're better at channeling. When the plot doesn't need Alana to be able to be healed, suddenly people can't heal her. I get what they're doing. They don't have a lot of time, so that they kind of rush through those things. I don't always love how that's handled, but, you know, Daze Conger suddenly being able to channel a shield, it's like, yeah, okay, well, she did it, and then she got killed. I guess that's over. Just another one of those things. I talked about this in my review last week. People are getting stabbed or shot by arrows all of the time, but because it's Alana, she gets an arrow like straight through her torso, and she's fine. But Daze Conger gets hit and she's down and dead immediately. Like, those are the kinds of things that kind of annoy me. But look, it's TV. I don't know what we can do about that. Another minor nitpick, no Ordith. Now, I know there's already too many characters to handle. There's too many things to keep track of. But Patton Fane calling himself Ordith, in my opinion, that's an important part of his character. I'll talk more about Patton Fane in a bit. More things on my list. Having Loial actually destroy the Waygate, it feels out of character to me. Loial wouldn't destroy a Waygate. The Waygates are grown by the Ogier, and it seems like something he wouldn't do. But I also recognize they had to do what they had to do for his character for whatever reasons. I'll talk more about Loial in a bit, but I guess I just didn't love how that was handled. I wrote here, I have mixed feelings about Aram. I'm glad he defended a child, but I really liked how his choice to pick up the sword in the books was very intentional and not done in a moment of panic or self-defense. I appreciated that Aram's character was more nuanced in the books, and that for him, it was a difficult decision to choose the sword, and he chose it in a time of peace, essentially, when people were preparing for battle in the books. And then another minor thing about Aram is one of the things I liked about Aram's story arc in the books is that it was foreshadowed by Min, because Min saw a tinker with a sword above Perrin as one of her viewings. And I would have liked to have some of that foreshadowing. But, you know, again, they got to rush through it. TV shorthand. Here's what I wrote about Patton Fane. I'm constantly disappointed by how the show treats Patton Fane. Not sure it was a good thing to let Patton Fane live, but I'm also glad he's not dead. Still holding out hope they'll do more with him. Maybe the whole Ordeith thing that I talked about earlier will come to fruition still. I don't know who Padan Fane's working for. I'll talk more about that in my theories and speculation section. And I don't normally talk about the ugly, especially because I feel like season 3 has just been so good. But there's one thing that I want to talk about that I feel is ugly about this episode, and that is killing Loyal. Now, is he dead? I don't know. I believe he is, sadly. From rumors I've heard behind the scenes and things, they killed him for good. I don't think it would be wise to do another fake out death with Loyal after the weird thing that happened at the end of season 1, but just killing him off really makes me sad. On the one hand, I totally get it. I don't think dressing up like that, wearing that heavy outfit and everything, I don't think that was comfortable for the actor. I think it's rough. And as much as I don't want to admit it, Loyal is a fairly minor character for the most part in the books. There are some important things that happen with his character, but these are the kinds of things that I feel like they're just not going to do in the show. And I do want to see more Ogier. I want to see Steading. I want to learn more about all of that. Maybe they'll still do that if the show continues to go on. But I don't know. There's something about what happened with Loyal that just really didn't sit well with me. I knew it was coming. I was worried. Something that people don't know is when we were given screeners to these episodes, they give you a list of things not to spoil. And before I even watched the episode, I read that list of things I wasn't allowed to spoil. And it said, don't tell people Loyal dies in this episode. And I was like, I was like so unhappy when I heard that. And of course, in context, it makes a little bit more sense having watched it. But killing Loyal, like, what are you thinking? Terrible, terrible, terrible. And again, I understand there are reasons for it. That doesn't mean I have to be happy about it. Do we think Loyal might come back? I mean, is it possible to survive in the ways falling like that? Maybe. I don't know. I mean, the Waygate got totally decimated, which is also not really accurate to the books, but I do appreciate that he sacrificed himself, and I really appreciated what he said about Perrin in his book, which I'll get to. All right, enough complaining. I know that was a lot. You know I love the show in general. Really quick, I want to talk about two very important things. One, we're doing a fan-made campaign called Renew What on Twitter and Blue Sky and online, and I'm going to have a link to some of that in the description below. But two, I have a good friend, Rob Christensen. He does the Weekly Wheel News. He's a big Wheel of Time fan. He's a content creator, and he's been struggling to get a job. It's been really hard. The job market's been bad for him. And he does these amazing Wheel of Time themed designs. He does t-shirts, he does dice, he does bookmarks, stickers. There's so many cool things that he does. And I wanted to give people a chance to buy his merch with a discount. And so if you go to newcreationsbyjen.com, you can purchase all kinds of really cool Wheel of Time merch. And I'm not taking a cent from it. This is all going to Rob and his wife, Jen, who run this site and do these designs. And so if you use the code Unraveling10, you can get 10% off your purchases on newcreationsbyjen.com, and you can get all kinds of really cool Wheel of Time merch. So I'd highly recommend going there. If you want to support a good Wheel of Time fan and friend, please go to newcreationsbyjen.com and help him out. All right, back to the review, the great and the surprising. This was such a tiny moment, but it's when Perrin was sharpening the axe and he looked up and looked at the hammer. To me, that scene had so much weight to it. And this is one of those things that the show can't really do. We can't get in the heads of our characters. And Perrin in particular is so internal. He has this internal monologue that completely drives his character that's really hard to communicate on screen. And so it was such a small moment, but when Perrin was sharpening the axe and he looked up at the hammer and he had that, he had that look on his face, to me it was like, I know what he's thinking, and I really appreciated that. And then later, when he picked up the hammer, that was such a cool moment for me. Him and Fail fighting in the forge the same way that he and Layla did in season 1, it kind of was a very sweet moment. It was kind of like a full circle moment for him. But this time, he was not going to sit back and just let something bad happen. Also, Fail wasn't going to let him just protect her, but I really appreciated that whole sequence with Fail and Perrin. In general, I mean, the battle sequence, the ending, all these little moments leading up to that were really, really great. Once again, I'm just going to go down my list because this is getting really long. So I like how Perrin didn't bother with a speech. He just sang Weep for Manetheren. That really stood out to me. That was a great moment. The music in this episode, I already talked about this, but man, the music just really hit hard. I loved it. Seeing Marin Alvear shout For the Two Rivers, it actually made me choke up. Fail has Perrin's back. Seeing her stab the Trolloc behind Perrin was an awesome moment, her with her knives. I hated Loyal dying, but I loved how he hummed Weep for Manetheren as he sacrificed himself. And then did you notice the Hero of the Horn theme played as he sacrificed himself? So Loyal is a hero of the horn. Other just really great moments. I'm just going to read this because it was so beautiful. Loyal's book. He said, The wheel turns, and the red eagle of Manetheren becomes a wolf. The two rivers stands alone against the shadow, with a blacksmith to lead them. A man who took that role not because he wanted to lead, but because his people wanted to follow. A man of honor, a man whose family was taken from him, but who stood tall in his sorrow and protected those he could. Perrin Bara, my friend. And then the people saying, "Hail, Perrin Goldeneyes, Lord of the Two Rivers," as he left. Really, really great ending. All right, this next section, I'm going to talk about theories and speculation, and this is a little bit more book spoilery. So if you haven't read the books, you might want to turn away now. Thank you for watching, liking, commenting respectfully, and thank you to all my supporters. Let's move on to speculation and theories. So why are there no fades? The obvious answer is budget didn't allow it. And I don't know if they're ever going to address this, but my thinking is there were no fades there because Padan Fain was the one in charge. And as we know in the books, Padan Fain has problems with fades. That fade nailed to the door in season 2 is a hint. I hope that they continue to develop that more, but that's my sort of justification for no fades. Also, Lord Luke. One of the big questions for me is, if we aren't getting more Perrin this season, which I'm guessing if we are, it's going to be very little. My feeling is this was kind of the end of Perrin's arc for this season. What are they going to do with Perrin next? There's still so much to do with him. The Wolf Dream, Slayer, Brigitte, all that. So I actually think that they're trying to kind of wrap up the Perrin White Cloak thing, and then that will be kind of like first part of season 4. And then hopefully there will be more stuff with Trollocs. Lord Luke will hopefully play a role. So I'm interested to see where that goes. But yeah, I'm not really sure what they're going to do with Perrin's character. Now we know Perrin wasn't in book 5, like at all. He just stuck around in the Two Rivers, and obviously they're not doing that. So what are they doing? I'm looking forward to seeing. Is this going to be kind of like a role reversal of the books where Fael will have to rescue Perrin? We'll see. This is a big one, but I'm starting to think Ishamael isn't really dead. Now I say that kind of winking because you know how the books go. It's not clear if Ishamael's dead, and then when he dies, he comes back, and then he comes back again after he dies, and he dies a lot. Then he comes back as a different person. It's all very complicated. But I am starting to believe that Padan Fain is still answering to Ishamael and Liandrin as well. Liandrin talked about having a master. Padan Fain talked about having a master. Padan Fain did say the Great Lord, talking about the Great Lord of the Dark, but the show has been pretty clear to tell us the Dark One isn't speaking to anybody but his Nameless, and he doesn't currently have a Nameless, or does he? Ishamael could still be alive. So I'm really hopeful for that. Do you think that Padan Fain was working for just some random Forsaken, or do you think he's still working for Ishamael? It sure felt like in season 2 that it was only loyal to Ishamael, not to anybody else. But this is another kind of complaint I have about Padan Fain. He shouldn't be loyal to any of the Forsaken. He should be separating himself from them. Another thing, where was the dagger? Where was Padan Fain's dagger? Is that even going to be a thing anymore, or is it just gone now? I don't know. I guess that was it. I thought I had a longer list of theories and speculation, but that was it for this episode. Obviously, I had a lot to say about this episode. What did you think of the episode? Let me know in the comments, and thank you for watching. Until next time, let the dragon ride again on the winds of Prime.